Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The courtroom was silent, tense as a thread about to snap. The judges, jury, and spectators held their breath as a trembling man sat in the dock, looking around in despair. Michael Harper, an ordinary citizen, was accused of a crime he had never committed. The death penalty hung over his head like a sword of Damocles. As the defense attorney prepared to deliver his closing argument, a strange noise was heard near the entrance. A dog, a black and tan shepherd, was calmly advancing down the central aisle. The murmurs turned to incredulous whispers. The animal wore a small pouch around its neck attached to its collar. With almost human determination, it approached the judge and placed the pouch in front of him. The judge frowned and opened the package. Inside, carefully organized documents revealed vital evidence, previously unknown videos, recordings, and testimonies capable of proving Michael's innocence. The spectators, the lawyers, and even the prosecutors stood frozen in disbelief. The dog, as if aware that his mission was accomplished, sat quietly near the dock. His penetrating gaze seemed to say, "Look carefully, the truth is there." Within minutes, the turn of events shocked the entire room. The evidence was irrefutable, and the expected verdict was overturned. Michael Harper, once convicted, felt an immense weight lifted from his shoulders. He bent down to pet the dog, a mixture of gratitude and wonder in his eyes. No one had ever seen such a momentous act of canine loyalty and intelligence. On that day, in that courtroom, a dog saved a life, and reminded everyone that sometimes, heroes come on four legs. Michael Harper never imagined his life could change in an instant. That morning, he woke up like any other, ready to go to his job at a small delivery company. Yet, as he crossed the threshold of his house, wailing sirens reached him. The police were there, their faces grave, and one of the officers handed him a summons for immediate questioning. Confused and scared, Michael was taken to the police station. He was accused of an armed robbery and murder in a nearby neighborhood. The evidence looked damning on paper. His fingerprint had been found on the murder weapon, and several witnesses claimed to have seen him near the scene. But Michael knew he hadn't done anything. He'd spent the evening at home, alone, watching a movie, with no one to confirm it. As the charges were read in the courtroom, Michael felt his heart sink. The prosecutor, cold and implacable, presented the case with chilling assurance. The press was already following the case closely, reporting that conviction seemed inevitable. The only light in this tunnel, a small stray dog he had fed a few weeks earlier near his apartment building. Michael had noticed that the animal seemed particularly intelligent, always attentive to his movements. This fragile bond with the animal gave him a spark of hope, as if somewhere, an unexpected ally might emerge. As he left the room to return to pre-trial detention, he did not yet know that this dog, so small and discreet, would become the pivot of his survival. Night was falling on the city, enveloping the streets in a quiet darkness. The little black and tan shepherd, whom Michael had nicknamed Shadow, wandered near his old apartment building. For the past few weeks, Shadow seemed to be more than just a stray dog. He carefully observed people coming and going, followed strangers curiously, and always returned to Michael, as if to watch over him. That night, Shadow sensed something was wrong. He knew his human friend was in danger, unjustly accused. With a nimble leap, he burst through the gate of the building and slipped inside. The sounds of a muffled argument coming from the neighborhood caught his attention. Without hesitation, he slipped behind the half-open door of an adjacent apartment and discovered a group of men handling documents and personal belongings belonging to Michael. Shadow understood immediately. These men were connected to the crime Michael was accused of. The detective dog's instinct kicked in. He sniffed every paper, every photo, every file on the open computer. He memorized the faces and the evidence, understanding that he must be carrying something important to help Michael. The dog grabbed a small USB drive that had fallen to the floor with its teeth, containing recordings that could exonerate Michael. Carefully and quickly, it left the apartment, weaving between cars and passers-by, until it reached the relative safety of its starting point, the park where Michael usually found it. Shadow lay down, clutching the USB drive under his collar, watching the horizon as if he knew that tomorrow he would have to enter a far more dangerous place, the courthouse. His mission had just begun. The morning of the trial, the tension was palpable. Michael Harper walked slowly toward the courtroom, escorted by guards. His heart was pounding. Each step was a cruel reminder of the injustice he was facing. The prosecutor prepared his case, confident of victory, while the defense attorney seemed helpless in the face of the supposedly irrefutable evidence. Suddenly, a murmur rippled through the room. An unusual commotion was felt near the main entrance. The doors slowly opened and, against all expectations, Shadow Michael's dog entered with a confident stride. The spectators burst into surprise and the judge frowned in puzzlement. The animal wore a small pouch around its neck attached to its collar. Without hesitation, Shadow crossed the center aisle, dodging the surprised feet of the jurors and lawyers, and placed the folder in front of the judge. A deathly silence fell. The judge hesitantly took the folder and opened it. Inside were documents and a USB drive neatly arranged. The stunned lawyers examined the contents. The flash drive contained surveillance videos and communications proving that Michael had never been at the scene of the crime. The witnesses and evidence against him had been manipulated. The prosecutor, pale, realized that the trial was taking an unexpected turn. Michael, his eyes wide, looked at Shadow, his heart filled with emotion. The animal had accomplished the impossible, he had just placed the truth in the court's hands. In this room, until then dominated by fear and despair, hope was reborn thanks to a dog. The silence in the courtroom was quickly replaced by an intense murmur. Jurors whispered among themselves, lawyers frantically flipped through the documents Shadow had brought, and even the prosecutor seemed unsettled. The evidence in the folder and the USB drive clearly demonstrated that Michael Harper was innocent. The judge, frowning, raised his hand to restore order. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began in a firm but astonished voice, "it appears we have received crucial information that we did not possess before." He signaled to the defense attorney to examine the documents immediately. The lawyer, an experienced man named Thomas Reynolds, felt his heart race. Every page confirmed what he had always suspected: Michael had been framed. The videos showed the real culprit manipulating the crime scene, and intercepted communications proved that some witnesses had been bribed to falsely accuse Michael. The prosecutor tried to challenge the validity of the evidence, but even he could not deny the obvious. The spectators, reporters, and court employees were stunned. Some murmured, "Who would have thought a dog could save a man?" Michael, sitting in the dock, felt tears well up in his eyes. He leaned toward Shadow, who had remained seated beside him, his tail wagging slightly. "Thank you," Michael murmured. The animal responded with an intense, almost human-like look, as if to say, "The battle isn't over yet, but the truth is on the march." The judge then ordered a recess, allowing all parties to calmly consider the new evidence. The tension in the room was palpable, but for Michael, a ray of hope had just pierced the shadow of conviction. After the judge's break, the courtroom was filled with almost unbearable tension. The prosecutor, Richard Mallory, a man known for his tenacity, was not about to let Michael Harper get away so easily. With a determined step, he walked up to the judge and asked to examine the USB drive and documents more closely. "Your Honor," Mallory began, her voice sharp, "this evidence appears irrefutable, but it is possible that it has been manipulated. We request that it be verified before any decision is made." Thomas Reynolds, Michael's lawyer, nodded undaunted. "Of course, Your Honor. But I assure you that this evidence comes directly from a reliable source and, as you will see, its authenticity is beyond dispute." Frustrated, Mallory decided to push the matter further. He called a computer expert to examine the USB drive on site, hoping to find even the slightest trace of tampering. The court held its breath as the expert connected the device to his computer. It was then that Shadow, sensing the tension and the possibility that his efforts would be wasted, took a step forward. The dog suddenly barked, high-pitched and persistent, staring at the expert and the USB drive. Everyone in the room turned to look at him. Michael's lawyer approached and whispered in the judge's ear, "Watch carefully, Your Honor. This dog knows the truth." The intrigued expert resumed his examination and discovered a crucial detail: the USB drive contained metadata indicating exactly when and by whom the files had been created. The recordings matched Michael's testimony perfectly and demonstrated that the incriminating evidence had been fabricated by the corrupt men Shadow had spotted the previous night. Mallory stood there helplessly. The attempt at discrediting him had failed. Shadow sat proudly, his tail wagging slightly, as if savoring the victory. Michael, his eyes wide, felt an immense sense of relief wash over him. The dog he had thought was simply a loyal friend had just proven once again that he was much more than that, a hero. The murmur in the courtroom had reached an unusual volume. Reporters were frantically typing on their keyboards, spectators were holding their breath, and Michael Harper couldn't stop staring at Shadow, his four-legged hero. The judge, Margaret Lawson, finally stood up, her dress billowing behind her as she prepared to deliver her decision. After carefully reviewing the new evidence, she began, her voice deep but clear, "It is clear that the charges against Mr. Harper were based on falsified information." A silence fell, filled with tension and hope. Accordingly, the judge continued, "All charges against Mr. Michael Harper are abandoned immediately. He is free to leave this court." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the room. Prosecutor Mallory paled and sat back down, unable to argue further. The jurors, some still in shock, began to relax, and the audience erupted in applause. Michael, still incredulous, stood up and walked over to Shadow. He bent down and stroked the dog fondly. "You saved my life. I can never thank you enough," he whispered. Shadow, faithful and calm, rested his head against Michael's hand, as if understanding the magnitude of his gesture. Judge Lawson, observing the scene, couldn't help but smile slightly. She had never seen a dog influence the course of a trial so decisively. "This is a momentous day for justice," she thought, as she delivered her official verdict. For Michael, it wasn't just freedom that mattered. It was recognition of the loyalty and intelligence of an animal that refused to give up on him, even in the darkest moments. That day, he understood that an unlikely bond could change the fate of an entire life. A few days after the trial, Michael Harper was trying to get back to normal life. His newfound freedom was a huge relief, but he knew the outside world was now looking at him with new eyes. The media had covered the story of the hero dog, nicknamed by some, Shadow, the four-legged vigilante. Everywhere Michael went, people asked him for details about the animal and what had really happened in the courtroom. Shadow, for his part, seemed perfectly aware of his role. He followed Michael everywhere, attentive to every move, as if to protect not only his friend, but also the truth he had revealed. Michael had set up a small, comfortable space for him in his apartment, with cushions and toys, but the animal preferred to stay close to him, vigilant and loyal. One morning, as Michael was drinking coffee, his phone buzzed incessantly. Journalists, animal behavior researchers, and even police officers wanted to meet with Shadow to understand how a dog had been able to identify and bring back crucial evidence. Michael realized that his companion's life was about to change, just like his own. Yet despite the sudden attention, Michael remained focused on what mattered, rebuilding his life. He reconnected with friends, colleagues, and family, explaining the incredible story of the trial and the dog that had saved his life. Each story reinforced a sense of gratitude and admiration for Shadow. That day, as he watched his faithful companion playing in the living room, Michael thought, if a dog can change the course of justice, then there is no limit to what we, humans and animals, can accomplish together. A few weeks after Michael's release, Shadow's story began to spread across the country. Newspapers, television programs, and even social media recounted the incredible feat of the dog who had saved a man from the death penalty. Michael, though honored, remained humble and repeatedly insisted that the real hero was Shadow. Little by little, the attention of animal behavior experts and criminology researchers began to draw. They wanted to understand how a dog could detect evidence, track suspects, and choose the right information to report. Shadow became a true celebrity in the scientific world, sparking debates about animal intelligence and the instinct for justice. Michael, meanwhile, was contacted by animal rights and legal protection organizations. They saw Shadow as a symbol of loyalty, courage, and intelligence, capable of reminding us that sometimes the truth can come from those we underestimate. Michael began attending conferences and sharing his experience, always accompanied by Shadow, who remained discreet but attentive to every gesture. In his neighborhood, Shadow also became an inspiration to children and neighbors. Those who had once ignored him or dismissed him as just another stray began to admire him. Residents spoke of how he had saved an innocent man's life, and some began to see their own pets in a different light. Michael realized then that their story went far beyond the personal. Shadow had changed not only his life, but also the lives of others, reminding him that courage and loyalty can come in unexpected forms. As Michael and Shadow began to return to a peaceful life, a new concern arose. Men connected to the previous case, frustrated by the failure of their plan to frame Michael, had decided to seek revenge. Michael received anonymous messages and threatening calls. "You won't get off so easily." Shadow, always attentive to his master's every move, immediately sensed the danger. His ears pricked up, his eyes scanning every corner of the apartment and every visitor. He refused to leave Michael's side, as if he knew their fight wasn't over yet. One evening, as Michael was returning from a meeting with journalists, he sensed an ominous presence behind him. 3 masked men were attempting to attack him in a dark alley. Before Michael could even react, Shadow leaped forward with surprising agility. He barked furiously, bit one of the attackers, and blocked the path for the others. His speed and courage disoriented the assailants, who fled, frightened by the determined dog. Michael, trembling but relieved, took Shadow into his arms. "I don't know what I'd do without you," he whispered. He realized how deep the bond between them was. Shadow wasn't just a smart dog, he was a protector and a loyal friend, ready to do anything to save his life again. The next day, Michael contacted the authorities to report the threat and increased his security. But he knew that as long as Shadow was by his side, no force could break their alliance. The dog who had saved a trial could now protect his master in the real world, proving once again that courage and loyalty could manifest in unexpected ways. A few months after the incident, Michael Harper had returned to a relatively normal life. His job, family, and friends welcomed him warmly, but nothing had changed as much as Shadow's role in his life. The now famous dog continued to live with Michael, loyal and attentive, but he had also begun to receive unexpected public recognition. An official ceremony was held in the city, attended by the mayor, the press, and several animal welfare organizations. Michael spoke, his voice trembling but filled with emotion. "Today, I'm not just talking about my newfound freedom. I'm talking about loyalty, courage, and intelligence. This dog, Shadow, didn't just save my life, he reminded everyone that hope can come from the most unexpected sources." Shadow, sitting proudly at his side, raised his head as if he understood every word. Applause erupted, and several children came to pet the dog, amazed by his exploits. Animal behavior researchers and court officials also came to congratulate Michael and Shadow, emphasizing how their story could inspire changes in the way we view animal intelligence and its role in society. That evening, Michael returned home, Shadow trotting happily beside him. He sat in his living room, stroking the dog's shiny coat, and thought, "We've been through injustice, danger, and uncertainty, and yet you've stayed by my side, ready for anything." Shadow laid his head on Michael's lap, calmly, with a serenity that seemed to say, "We did the right thing. And life goes on, together." The trial was over, the threats were over, and the truth was restored. But beyond justice and freedom, Michael understood that the greatest lesson came from his four-legged friend. Courage, loyalty, and perseverance can change lives, sometimes in ways we never imagined. And so, Michael and Shadow continued on their way, united by an unbreakable bond and an adventure that would remain etched in the memories of all who witnessed this improbable miracle.